Hello and welcome to our next guide on our friend Sigvald. Sorry for the noise. Today we're gonna be working on completing the model. We'll be doing the base and we'll be doing the horns. I have also painted the bottom of the cape off camera. The color I have used for it is 207 Haute Pastel from Molotov, which I have mixed with the magenta we used at the top for the shadows and then highlighted with Haute Pastel to paint it. I still have to clean up the bottom of the cape here, but that's irrelevant right now. And yeah, we just cleaned up the model over and over, just fixed the blends, fixed the highlights, fixed everything. But with the same colors I showed you, with the same principles I've shown you, nothing has been hidden. I just haven't painted these on camera because it would have been just a repeat of this with different colors. So I thought it would be interesting to skip through that. As for the base, I base coated it using dark green gray from AK, to which I have added a little bit of black. You can see the mix here. We base coated it and we worked on that. So it's now time to start working fully on the base. The color we currently have on it is a shadow. So let's work on the mid-tones. And for those, I'm going to be using the green from Chimera Colors, which is a color I absolutely love, to which I am going to add a bit of white. We also need a bit of blue into it, so I'm going to be using Russian blue from Vallejo Model Color, because I want to turn the color of the base into the one we see on the shield, and I'm going through a different recipes just to show you. So we got this color here. We can add a bit more blue. There we go. And now I'm gonna be using an old brush because we're gonna be doing a lot of over brushing or fancy dry brushing. Since the base has a lot of textures on it, we don't really need to paint the effect. Let me see if I can try to get this on while I explain. We don't really need to sit there and paint everything ourselves. We can just let the brush do the work for us, thanks to the textures present on the sculpt. And because of that, we're going to be doing overbrushing. Overbrushing is when you use thin paint, like the one we have on the model, and you just gently move it across a surface without doing any real pressure. So it's basically dry brushing, you can see, but with thin paint, so that the paint doesn't really generate any chalkiness on the model, and it instead looks pretty clean. So we're gonna be doing our quick base like this, just over brushing the color onto everything. If necessary, we're gonna be doing some washing, some cleanup, but generally speaking, I want to use this intense greenish blue color to get myself a mid-tone onto the base. You can see it's already matching a bit more the shield. We're not done yet though. Yeah. This is also gonna help give us a bit more of an aged look, since the paint is being applied so roughly, but still elegantly, because it has been thinned, so it's not just a dry brush, but it's instead an overbrush, which makes the paint dry pretty nicely, but it's being applied almost like a makeup, you know? You know how people put makeup on their faces and they kind of do this motion when applying it to blend? That's what we're doing here with this base. We're applying the paint with almost none of it on the brush, so that as we place it and move the brush around, we thin it. I'm going to be adding a bit of Sunny Skin Tone from AK to the color. And we're going to doing exactly the same thing. This time trying to focus these highlights a bit more towards the top of the model. You see that it's creating a nice random effect. So I know dry brushing isn't exactly dry brushing, or over brushing isn't considered a high quality technique, and it really isn't, but there is a place and time for it, and heavily textured areas like these bases really work better when you dry brush them than when you paint them by hand, because picking out all of these details by hand would have taken me more than an hour, and I wouldn't have gotten a much better result, honestly. So instead, we're just gonna... Here I am thinning the paint a bit more. The previous step paint, I'm thinning it a bit more, so it flows into the recesses and it doesn't create such a stark contrast. So I'm basically modifying the mid-tone. I want the bluish green we had used earlier to be a bit more prominent in the upper part of the base. And I'm actually painting now. I am glazing this color in so that it modifies the color of the shadows and turns it instead to this bluish color, so that you see there is a bit more volume interpretation than just a dry brush. So see, it's about using dry brushing smartly. So here we're just constantly using our thinned out blue-green to push the mid-tone towards a more volumetrically adapt color. We're trying to pick out the volumes here. So we're going to leave this dark greenish gray in the shadows, and we're going to bring out the bluish color a bit more in the mid-tones as we get closer to the actual model, as if he had a spotlight on him, right? Because he is Sigvald the Magnificent, so creating the illusion of a spotlight on a model like this works really well. We can do it on the back too. We can go back to overbrushing a little bit. We can switch between the two based on how much paint we have. We can overbrush, we can paint, we can dry brush. It's up to how you want to use the paint. Like, the same dilution can be used for different effects. If you have more paint on the brush, you're gonna just normally paint. If you have almost no paint on the brush, you're gonna be overbrushing, right? And that's part of what makes this interesting. So now we're gonna be going back to overbrushing. We're gonna re-pick out the highlights, and now that we have modified the mid-tone beneath it, they're gonna look much better. And we can add a bit more sunny skin tone to create a last highlight around the model, like so, on the edges too. Here. See, and also the shield is looking pretty good now thanks to this effect, because we now have something to reflect off of it. So far, the shield looked like weird because there was nothing to reflect off of it. Now that we have the base color, everything is making sense. So it's a plan that comes together. Here on the back, we can go back to the previous highlight color. We're not going to go as bright as the strongest highlight on the front because it is the back of the model. So we want to make it look like there's less light happening here, but we also want to give it some light. So we're just not going to go with the strongest highlight we have at our disposal, but we're going to go with something close to it so it thematically makes sense. And it also creates a bit more of an interesting look on the back rather than just a boring black, gray, green. Instead of painting every single one of these mosaic pieces, we can just overbrush on them, and our brush is gonna pick them out automatically. Don't get fooled into thinking that there is only one way to paint, and if you use beginner techniques, you are a beginner. That's not true. A beginner uses beginner techniques when it should be using advanced techniques. An advanced painter knows exactly what technique to use based on what they're painting. So using dry brushing when it's appropriate makes you a better painter than somebody who glazes a base entirely, because you're going to get the same result more quickly. And speed in painting is one of the skills of a great painter. Nobody cares if you paint on a beautiful model every 5 years. There needs to be something like consistency in your painting, right? And in order to achieve consistency, you need to be fast. And in order to be fast, you need to be able to skip steps when necessary, such as this one. The base is full of texture. Why do the sculptors work when the sculptors has done such a great job for us, creating all of these interesting textures on the base? We just need to interpret them. How do you interpret something that's heavily textured, like heavily textured? You dry brush it. Now, if you want, you can be a fancy painter a bit more and add a bit of black. Let me get some black. Add a bit of black to the Chimera green. And we can thin it out massively. And with this glaze, we can go and pick out the areas of shadow where we feel like our shadow isn't strong enough, our gray shadow isn't strong enough. If we feel like we need more blackness in a few areas, we can go and pick it out ourselves, right? For example, here the bottom of this thing could have a bit better of a volume. We can also work the color in here, right? We can push the volumes a bit more by using the brush, but our lights effectively come from dry brushing, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. See, I'm just glazing the color in. In all of the volumes where I need a bit more darkness. Let's paint the skeletons. I'm gonna be picking English uniform from Vallejo model color. Whoop. I'm gonna be mixing English uniform plus Chimera green plus black. We can add a bit more English uniform. And this is gonna be our base coat. So we're gonna base coat our bones in this green color. Now that we have this green, we can add more English uniform to the mix, like this, and get ourselves a mid-tone. We're gonna leave this dark green in the recesses and paint everything else with this nice ochre color. I'm just gonna redo the highlight a little bit in a few areas where I feel like it didn't cover well enough. Okay. Now we can add sunny skin tone to this mix to highlight. A little bit of sunny skin tone to get ourselves an highlight and just block it in. We can use a slightly darker mix of that highlight for the skulls in the back, again to show a small difference between the area of light and the area of shadow. Okay, and then we can just thin out the previous color, just thin it out a lot. And basically glaze it over the highlights to blend them with the previous color. Just do a quick blend like this. There we go. Okay, and with this we're done. So I think what we need to do last is the bones. It's the horns. I'm gonna do this in gold, no metallic, very quickly later on. It's not important really. So let's do the bone, the horns. So I'm gonna start from a black, which is gonna start at the base of the horns. I don't need to go all the way up to black because I know the tip of the horns is gonna be a different color. But first off, let's paint the horns black. These ones at the front are gonna be darker. I made a mess here, so let me try to clean it out before it dries. Okay, saved. Anyway, we can go as far as the half of the horns with this black. And then at the tips, we can use the dark green gray from AK. We can start painting this color in. This dark green gray is gonna act a bit of as a mid-tone. We're gonna be wet blending it because it's easy on a surface like this one. It's very easy to wet blend, so we're just gonna be moving around between the black and the dark gray green until we're happy with what we have. They're both pretty dark colors, so they should be blending together without too much problems. Okay. And now that we got the two colors blended in, we can add some Chimera white to our green to create an highlight. And we can place the highlight further up the horns. We can also use it to start highlighting the sculpt here. Okay. And then sunny skin tone to finish it off with a bright yellow-green color. Okay. Now all we gotta do is just make sure that the two colors, the colors blend together a bit better. So we're gonna do a few glazes to clean up any mistakes, reinforce the edge highlights, which means we're gonna be needing to go back to the tip of the horn, to the base of the horns, and just kind of paint in the edge highlight so that it flows through the whole horn instead of stopping randomly in the middle of it. We can also use these, the second highlight, yes, to do the tips of the horns here. And quickly blend them in with some black. Just to avoid leaving them just base coated, you know what I mean? Okay, and this is it, my friends. I think I'm gonna be looking around the model, cleaning up any mistakes, any ironing out kinks, but this is the idea. This is how to paint Sigvald at a very, very high level. I hope you have enjoyed these guides. I hope you've learned a lot. I think there was a lot to talk about. Lots of interesting colors and ways to paint them. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank you so much for being part of the Patreon. I hope you liked this video. I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic life and day and month. I'll see you later. Bye bye.